Dax,
Yeah.
welcome back for the second time.
Teleporting again.
Part two. Yeah, it's the VPN. I switched VPN right in the, well, when I cut out, I'm like, okay, maybe it's my VPN, so I switched it, and now I'm back. Big thing that was covered at the conferences that I was at, which was both TextCap and NABS, North American Blockchain Conference, and the first ever TextCap, which is the first ever Texas Capital Markets Conference.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so everyone from the NASDAQ to the Dow Jones to the New Texas Stock Exchange was there. I actually got to interview the lady who's the head of the New Texas Stock Exchange. There's like a 10-minute thing on there. But the thing that they kept hammering when I met with legislators, I even met with Governor Abbott on his way out. Amazing man in terms of his story and how he's gotten places. But the thing that they reminded me is it's quarterly and it's midterms time. There will be bills if you're an American or even an EU citizen. There are bills and legislation out there that are affecting your privacy. You need to go and vote. I know it's cliche. I know it's silly. Write a letter to your representative, to your councilman if you're in the UK, to your local government if you're in the EU, and to your senator and your representative here in the United States, because they do take those letters seriously, and you're a constituent, and they should be voting and pushing forward the legislation you want. Which I think is really important. I couldn't do it without the community, like I said before, and the community is going to be the thing that rallies behind a bill or rallies behind getting the vote done to make sure that our privacy stays intact, which I think is super important.
Well, this is kind of fascinating because you're one of the few people that have like been on ground floor, boots on the ground in Texas, talking at some of these things, speaking with these people. What does the formation of capital and interest look like right now for crypto from Texas and legislation? And we've seen on our end, we've been documenting just like the massive push towards bringing markets on chain, capital markets on chain, just like this adoption of crypto. What, like firsthand, what does that look like?
Oh, then you guys should have been at NABS because there were 6 panels, Dow Jones, T. Rowe Price, Charles Schwab's, all up there, and they have their own ETFs, they have their own markets, and they are pushing conventional retirement fund managers into this. I think whatever cycles you think are going on, I think 26 is going to be more bullish than anyone could ever imagine by the amount of people onboarding in the institutional area. So, right, institutional would be banks, investment funds, capital managers, those people that aren't just the edge cases that, got into Bitcoin or crypto early. These people got on stage, like people who have been doing the traditional ETF or, even, buy US Treasury bonds people were at this conference and we're going, yeah, we're figuring out how to do that. The labor market and the different things are going to be a little difficult. I did stream the lunch talk with the head of the Dallas Federal Reserve, and she was really cool. She gave a market and like jobs outlook for the next year. And so the thing that is really supporting and like underwriting our economy right now is technology. AI, a lot of it, but also people don't realize is the Bitcoin and the blockchain technology is the other half of the reason why the economy is afloat, even with jobs in the market the way that it is. And so that being the case, like however bearish you think it is right now or bullish it is right now, this is almost like a bear season compared to where we could be when jobs recover, when the market recovers even more in like the underlying signals, right? Because the underlying signals like the job market, the trades market, like that is not doing okay. But our overall market capitalization, the stock exchange, it's doing gangbusters because of blockchain and because of AI. And when we can get people back to work and use privacy preserving technologies to do it, I think, these next 5-10 years are going to be huge. I think this is finally going to be the decade where grandma and grandpa finally get on Bitcoin or finally get on Ethereum or finally get on Solana.
So let me cook here because I have been over these last few years kind of experimenting with this idea of the roaring 20s, right? Like this being that era where there's just massive adoption because there's you have new market participants in terms of institutions and just bigger capital that just outsizes anything than what we have here currently.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. You have new users, and with the way kind of these new age projects such as Zera are kind of outshining these dino coins is their tokenomics. You're kind of tying tokenomics more closely to the growth of your product or your platform or whatever it is that you're building. And so when you combine all of that with this kind of easing in regulation, and now you're saying that this is all saving our economy. So it would kind of behoove the US to invest and put more resources to push this forward. It kind of begs the question of, or not begs the question, but to me, it kind of solidifies that thesis of this being the roaring 20s style of or the roaring 20s type of era for crypto, and not just anything and everything going up, but really the ones the projects that are building something serious. What's your take on that from everything that you've seen at these meetings, at these conferences?
I think you're right, and I think it's even cooler if you could extend it to the reverse roaring 20s, because the 19s roaring 20s started out with a big economic boom and ended with the Great Depression, right, in World War II. So we started with a depression, we started with a global pandemic, and the Spanish influenza also occurred in the 1900s at that same time, right? So it's almost exactly the same, right? We start with a really slow, shitty pandemic. And as things ramp up and we get new technologies, it was cars back then. Now it's crypto. Now it's AI. I think your analogy is perfect. And because I'm also in my 20s, my roaring 20s, to be a really fun time of building powerful, meaningful tools for everyone. But I think you're absolutely right. The institutional adoption that really drove home not the roaring 20s necessarily, but post World War II America, with the rise of the cars that came out of the 20s, was roads. And so to me, the infrastructure that's going to come out of this AI boom and this blockchain boom is going to be data centers. And we're already seeing that. Both the good and the bad of data centers, right? Noise pollution hurting people, while at the same time, this is the fastest data centers have ever gone up in history in America. It's so fast and trade secretive that the only way to track it has actually been to track EPA filings for backup generators, because you have to do an environmental impact study and file for them. So there's actually a website where you can go and you can see all the new developments planned for the next 8 months, 10 months, 2 years. And it is insane. Most of America will be covered in data centers. And with that already level of institutional buy-in, where we know that miners are coming out, and that was the other cool thing about NABS, was it was a hardware conference too. I actually just got this. It is a desktop miner that allows you to mine Bitcoin just on your desktop. And so they had programs and companies like this already out there at ACS, and we're seeing the investment at an institutional level. For anyone who out there has $1 million can go stand up a Bitcoin mine or a Solana farm, right now. Yeah, exactly. And so all these things will be available to even the lower tier of the we talk about $1 million, like that's a lot of money to the average person, but a lot of people, especially in this space, or investors, do have $1 million lying around, and they can turn around and turn that into meaningful infrastructure. I think we're going to see a huge boom in, just like we have data centers, we're going to see a huge boom in mining and validator centers, depending on, Solana validators or Bitcoin miners. And that exposure is really going to drive this innovation and the growth that we need to keep the chain scalable, decrease fees, and increase speed.
This is a fascinating conversation. You just connected, or compared, I should say, data centers to back in the 1920s, like roads for cars and stuff. If data centers are the roads for the future of cars in the 19th, if data centers are today's version of roads for cars, what are the cars of today, if that makes sense, right? Data centers are the roads, the underlying technology, infrastructure. What drives on top of that?
Well, what drives on top of that is literally the internet. So you do have the roads providers, right? So if we could send the analogy, Ford, GM, or Ford and GMC, right? Early car manufacturers. Those are our Amazons. Those are our Googles, right? But you also had Harley Davidson's a big name now, but Harley Davidson was a couple of, if I'm remembering it, motorcycles originally were a couple brothers in the garage, right? And that's what cryptocurrency and Bitcoin started out as. And so, we have Google, we have Ford, but Bitcoin is now Harley Davidson. And Tesla came out of the blue in today's modern ecosystem. Solana could be that next big thing. And so In terms of that analogy and who's driving on it, it's the literal internet, right? Anyone can drive on it. That is the beauty of it. That is the purpose of not to get philosophical, but like that is the purpose of a government, right? Is to provide infrastructure. Anyone can ride a bike on a road, drive a car on a road, walk down a road. And the government's only responsibility is to collect enough taxes to make sure that road is maintained and goes useful places. And luckily with data centers and the way the internet works is we can already plug in a URL, an IP address, a DNS address, and making sure that high availability and that data availability is there for everybody is what these data centers will do. It'll make sure the data is there, that the blockchain is available at high and reasonable speeds for everyone to participate in whether or not they want to train a massive AI to do something and suck up thousands of terabytes of data, or like our use case, right? I want a better wallet interface. Places like Phantom, MetaMask, Backpack, right? They only update their prices once every 5, maybe even 10 minutes, right? Even Coinbase doesn't update their live pricing scheme more than once a minute or maybe once every 5 minutes, right? High data availability, good data centers, partnering with a few partners that we talked to, or even onboarding, like I said, engineers from Gemini to build out a better and faster pricing API means that we can leverage these new data centers, which will make it cheaper for us to have data that refreshes every 30 seconds. So you will actually have better and faster pricing in your own wallet than when you're trading on Pump Fund.
This is a fascinating conversation because you're not saying this based off of some like obscure thesis or theory. It's not speculation. It's like you're watching it happen. We saw Nvidia put a huge $1 trillion, I forget the exact number, investment into data centers in the United States recently. And so it's like it feels like everyone on the inside building the data centers, maybe even government, kind of realizes this, but a lot of people are missing that. And so it's interesting for you to put it in perspective, like you just did.
And it's bigger than you will ever even, however fast you think it's happening, I guarantee you it's at least double that. Like, because I thought it was happening fast, and I went through some of the data. Like, I want to say there's going to be almost 1,000 new data centers over the next 18 months. 1,000.
Wow. What, give us a scale of size, an idea on that. Because 1,000 arbitrarily is not a huge number.
One 40 megawatt site from Google, which would be built in Arizona, takes 1 million gallons of water per day. Takes 40 megawatts of electricity. That's the size of a mid to large nuclear reactor plant. That is enough data, though. Yeah, exactly. And that's a $1 billion or a few $100 billion site, right? But that site will make back all of its money in cost in less than a year.
What?
Typically, that's the price point of a data center. Data centers are that's why they're people are looking at to invest in them more than they are Bitcoin, right? Because your return is based on Bitcoin price, whereas data center, the value of data or data transmission is pretty flat. So they can always estimate what their money making amount will be, their profit amount will be, and so then they can estimate their cost based on that. And yeah, Google has decided that spending that much money will mean that they make that much money back within a year or 18 months.
So Dax, your advice here, Dax, is if you have a couple $100 billion to throw around, go build a data center and you'll have some good ROI.
Yeah. And even just build out, your own mining thing. Cause I have to find the book, but I actually got to meet this really cool guy. He runs and owns the oldest still existing Bitcoin mining pool.
Oh, what?
Yeah. At the conference. Super nice guy. He wrote a book. I think he signed it for me.
That's an OG.
Yeah. Brains with a double I.
Brains.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he wrote a guide. It's a short book, so anyone can do it. And so that's the other thing I was talking about with the conference is, and what I was kind of getting at with the car analogy is anyone can go out and build a car with crypto in their own garage, and they can drive it on the roads that are these data centers. And so even if you're not directly benefiting from the new data centers, if you're building a project, right? Because a project still needs a website, a project needs a domain, a project gets routed on all these things that aren't a blockchain, and even the blockchain itself still runs over the internet, right? All the data gets transmitted over physical wires, which means data centers and routing centers are still playing a pivotal part in delivering the blockchain data to your end device, and so that everyone can take part in the ecosystem.
It kind of seems like these two things are disconnected, this conversation in Zera, but it's interesting because this is actually like pivotal in the growth that you expect Zera to have in the future. So I think like this second part of this conversation is almost just as interesting as the first part, if I had to say so. You talk about capital formation, equity, securities. We see a lot of people moving, or at least hoping for a token tied to equity in a company, or basically some more legalities and uh, things forming around these tokens. Has that been something you've given thought to? Is there like is at some point, if legalities allow it, could this token actually represent equity or some level of equity in the company? Just any thoughts there? I'd be interested in.
And
Um,
if I can add on to that question as well,
yeah.
have you seen that in your circle when as you talk with lawyers and senators, is that something that you know they have an opinion on?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this was brought up over a really fun dinner conversation with three of the biggest lawyers in the area, in the entire industry, and they were like, "Can I talk about it?" Yeah, I can talk about that one. They're representing one of the people in Mango DAO, with all this stuff going on with there. They have like an unwrapped DAO. And they think a lot of people in the industry, I'm finding, they think DAOs are pretty unnecessary for that kind of stuff, but that there is absolutely a place that exists for marking or representing equity for a company on chain in that manner, and that exists. Um, how that's done, there's so many different ways to do it that like I'm not qualified to say that, but I can say that like I'm gonna give you a call and I'm gonna schedule some time with my lawyer because she's amazing. She will talk your ear off. Former army gal.
Nice.
She sold propane and propane accessories back in the day too, before she was a
But
lawyer, right after she got out of the army. So if you like King of the Hill jokes, you'll love her. And she is brilliant. Represents one of the I think one of the best boutique firms in the industry, where if you can't afford $100,000 down deposit for the massive firms, she runs one of the best boutique firms. Like I said, she already works in crypto for years now.
what's her name?
Her name is Jill Witherspoon, or Wither. I'm gonna look it up. It's in my email. They're all in my email, but I will absolutely shout her out on my socials and I'll forward it to you guys as well.
Yeah, you should. And I think there's a lot of people, especially that watch our show, that are so in the trenches, in the weeds with crypto legalities and stuff, building projects. I think that's actually a really interesting connection to have. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, she's I think she's amazing. Is that a question here? When do you
No.
plan on doing marketing?
Oh yeah, there you go. There it is. Tony Bubbaloni. Yeah. When do you plan to push marketing of Zera, and how do you plan to market it?
Marketing. There have been some thoughts, and they're in the background. And I make passive connections. Like at NABS, I met really sweet lady. She's doing the media. She's the on-screen spokesperson for the Riot chain, and she did Fox News, and she's a producer. And so like I've talked to, and I grew up in LA, so like I know how a movie gets made. I grew up around where the pig gets slaughtered and the bacon gets made when it comes to movies, marketing, TV shows, all that stuff. So I'm not just by passively living there. I understand how a movie gets made, how a TV show gets made, how a marketing campaign gets made. And to kind of answer your question though, like there is no plans to do that yet. Like that is well in hand. There are like notes that are written down. There's a plan we could implement, but you guys have been so amazing with pushing this, with getting us to the benchmarks that we need just as a company to grow organically as a community, to like do the migration, to start collecting fees, to collect enough fees to pay for me to live and eat, pay for a couple other engineers, but also pay for the attorneys that we need to answer these questions and go to these conferences and continue to grow. That it's just been more of a self-reinforcing loop. Like you guys have done that for me to the point where, until we have like a physical product that I should put on the air and sell, like Trezor or like Ledger, if we're doing, let's put it this way, if we're doing marketing before that, something has gone wrong, because you guys have made organic growth so easy for us as a community, which is again why I want to thank you.
Dax,
Because you don't need to.
Dax, how do you do this without crypto? We love the Believe ecosystem. We love this idea of internet capital market and giving people with just ideas and visions the idea to bootstrap and fundraise money without maybe giving up equity or whatever it might be. Before crypto, how would you have been able to build something like this with no money coming in? With like what you would have to go on the VC route, maybe, or raise VC. Have you thought about that, or just maybe
I thought about that,
conceptualize?
but there's no need for VCs. Why would I give up control when odds are VC will want me to build something different? when there's honestly no rush with this as well. Like there's obviously market pressure and stuff like that to get a product out, and community pressure to get that stuff out. But with a VC and with using essentially capital to build a runway, right? The traditional VC route, like, because I lived in San Francisco, right? I've been around especially the companies that do Y Combinator, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
Y Combinator, yeah. So I know Y Combinator companies, that traditional route of, okay, you got $500,000, you got to build or die in 6 months. You got to scale, build or die, and establish cash flow in 6 months. There's no reason to do that with what we're doing. It's a math thesis. It was the first 3 months I told the community, I don't even know if this works. You got to wait for me to do the proofs and to make sure the math checks out and you get it validated. And they waited on me through that whole process, and we're working to expand. And so for me, like, why would I put myself through that when the purpose of the technology is to encounter problems and to solve them reasonably with reasonable, responsible, engineering decision making, rather than rushed market VC pressured, decision making, which will ultimately cloud and devalue, or maybe not devalue, but like dilute the meaningfulness of the product that we put out, when there's no need to do that, when we can take our time, build it correctly, build it responsibly. And then in terms of like VC versus like coal sales or like other things, we've really been able to establish, at least we hope with this short term, or this 30 to 90 days is our really testing period, right? With this migration just completing, wrapping down, and us getting the keys back we need to transfer to Meteora in the next 30 days, that 30 to 90 day window will tell us exactly what that cash flow looks like. You know what I mean? And maybe we will need to do that VC thing at some point. But I don't feel the pressure or the urgency to do that.
Do you think this would be possible without crypto? I mean, obviously it's a crypto product, but do you even think bootstrapping this and having this time? Yeah.
Maybe if I was like vice president of engineering at Google and I worked only 20-hour days at Google, and then had, my $500,000 base comp package plus stock options, and only worked 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week, and then spent the rest of my time on this and dumped all of my spare cash into this. But who's going to do that?
If everything was completely perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the most powerful thing, like just crypto in general. I mean, we just have a way of coming together, and your community has collectively seen, huge potential in this, and have basically given you what you needed to push this forward. So, I mean, I think that's just a that's just a testament to the power of community, if you will.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, the community has been amazing. I want to learn a little bit more about the communities that you guys have talked to, and what you guys have done, like with communities, and how you guys grew your show, especially. I haven't heard a lot about that.
Dude, let's chat, man. I know you got to hop real quick for a couple minutes, so go ahead and do that. We'll chat. Yeah, chill. What we'll talk with Dax about then maybe is kind of going to run us back to what we just mentioned, but the different ways tokens can be used, whether some are equities, some are buybacks and burns, some are like there's all these different ways to look at a token now. I think Dax would be really interested in this ownership coin, or the futarchy method, the conversation we had with Profit from MetaDAO.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's something he would kind of conceptualize, me interested in.
I guess the other thing is, like, is there like a migration system or something like that for MetaDAO? I mean, I guess really not, because it's just there has to be that supply control with tokens and all that. So,
well, migration probably wouldn't be an option. Zera just finished migration from I think PumpSwap or whatever they were on before, is AMM, or they said Radium's AMM to this Meteor AM. So they just migrated, and now they have the different fee structure, which is nice. So I don't even know if migration would be another option, but it is an interesting conversation, because I think the ownership model is super unique and interesting.
Yeah, dude. I honestly, like, I dare say that MetaDAO has cracked at least the crypto native side of it, right? Like, you have a lot of other platforms that are working mostly on this is MetaDAO, guys. We've been covering this for a little
Great
bit.
opportunity to buy that dip.
And like before we even go further, shout out to you guys, 5.3K viewers right now on this live stream. So
It's not so
shout
bad.
out to you guys. If you're new to the stream, welcome. If you're on YouTube, welcome. If you're on Kick, welcome. We're here Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. But yeah, so Meta DAO. Yeah, I think it's basically solved the crypto native side of, like, if you want to call it token holder rights, if you want to call it just like community, like true community driven protocols. It's not just like, a meme. It's not just a word that's kind of thrown out there on a white paper. It's actually and Dax, we kind of want to get your opinion on this, because MetaDAO essentially creates, like, when they launch unruggable tokens. So essentially, you launch on their you're able to fundraise on their platform. You can launch, and token holders basically use their supply in a prediction market, basically, that makes decisions,
Governance.
and yeah, governance, and like they basically can decide on what can be done with the treasury, what can be done with the rest of the supply. They can make decision on what's done with the protocol. So you really get live and real community feedback, and it's not in this like memeified DAO structure. And you can help me out here.
Yeah, I guess
Dom.
I'll put it like this in terms of like what it would be for Zera. And again, I'm just like interested in your opinions first and foremost, but you've talked about how strong your community is and you love community opinion. For example, with MetaDAO, you have these ownership tokens, and your piece of the token, just like normal government's tokens, goes towards voting and raising votes. And so what you do is you have basically full company control, and there obviously are push and pulls to this. But if anything needs to be done with the company, you would raise a vote, and the community would go and vote on it through this futarchy decision making process. Again, it's a little complicated to explain, so you would have to kind of study up on it. But the interesting idea here would be like, hey, you want to raise in your salary, raise about, hey, I need to raise my salary for this, this, and this, and I would really appreciate that. Like, we can take from our show treasury if you guys vote for that and give me the green light. And so it actually adds like, and then, hey, if you guys want revenue share from a certain amount of profits, you guys can vote on that. If you guys, so the company's decision and control is actually in the community's hands, but at the same time, it's not like just take. You can still get some back from it. It's a little complicated, but are you picking up at all what I'm saying here?
Yeah, no, I am, and I think it's a really great platform that's formalizing, if I'm picking up what you're putting down correctly, the formalizing, like, I'm a member of the Fox DAO and the Austin, Texas developer DAO, right? So like I'm a member of that, and like the Fox DAO does pretty good. I want to say they're 40 or 100 million, something like that market cap, right? And so like when they want to make a decision, they have a great user interface holders go into, but they built it all in-house, right? And it looks similar to this, but it's all built in-house. And so they do that exact same thing, when they want to unlock part of the treasury or hire a new engineer, something like that, it goes to a community vote. And I think that's powerful. Again, though, I think that there's a privacy question that needs to be answered in this context, right? So, one of the problems we ran into with the Zera, right, at least me coming from like a traditional startup hackathon kind of sense, I was like, okay, well, why is our on-chain war chest subject to everybody's scrutiny, And so maybe creating like a privacy threshold as well, where like, being able to shield the entire on-chain treasury, but use zero knowledge proofs. So if the treasury or the community, tries to sell, $1 million worth, that would really affect the price. So there's a day waiting period. The community votes on it, and a zero knowledge proof is issued to let you know, hey, this action is coming, vote for or against it. But otherwise, if it's well under that, or maybe just a 5K removal or a 20K removal, that, just to cover conventional business expenses that you don't want to have to continually explain, that can remain private. That can be treated just as if it was on your private books. And so, we've thought about building products like that as well. Like I said, I have that whole R&D kind of thought process file in that section, because there's a difference between governance and complete transparency, which I think is important for when you're governing something as a government. But when you're building a product, and maybe this is where I'm wrong, and maybe this is where it's like different from other meme coins and stuff, right? Is Zera's end goal is to release a product. You can't build a product. You can't build a car by committee, right? Have you ever heard that phrase? You can't build a car by committee. And so there still needs to be someone in the lead making a yes or no decision on engineering frameworks, on cost benefit analysis, on hiring. And like I said, and you mentioned earlier, like I love and respect the hell out of my community, but I don't think I'd ever leave hiring up to a community vote. I don't think
Yeah.
I would. You know what I mean?
Well, I think Steve Jobs is the one that said this. It's you know, the people don't actually know what they want, right? No one actually
Exactly.
knows what they want. And so I think it is important to have that governing deciding factor where like the CEO, the founder, like they have the ultimate decision. I think that's valuable. Um, I don't know. It's a push pull, something we're trying to figure out every day on this show, which is why we get founders from all sorts of different protocols, platforms, and launch pads on to explain their side of the story. And I don't know, it's just super interesting.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and I think some things that will answer that question too are coming out, like I said, because we're answering the legislative question. When that happens and we get formalism from the government and like the SEC and stuff like that, like yes, things like pump fund might go away because of laws and legislation, and we might not like that. But when that comes in, then it becomes a regulated security. Then you have absolute confidence that these founders are going to do it. Otherwise, they're going to jail because they broke the law. And so, we don't always, we're in crypto. We don't like the government anywhere near our shit, honestly. But it does give you that faith essentially, and that trust factor that we don't have right now. And all these companies are moving around trying to create software or math or on-chain solutions to these governance problems. While the government is still catching up, and they might become redundant. That company you just showed me might be dead in 5 years because a law came in that solves all of the regulatory problems that they're trying to solve and keeping people accountable. You know what I mean? And so I think it's a matter of, for us right now, and for holders or for traders or just whoever, it's a meme coin. It's going to be an unregulated security. You're taking all the risk on that. And when it's someone like me who wants to build a product, it is going to be up to you to use your bullshit meter. And that we should do a little bit less of the community expecting things and more let the leaders, because I've done this before, right? Like I have worked for MetaMask, I've built products before. I even worked at X as an intern. Like I've built products before. And so kneecapping someone or saying you have to do it this way because everybody else is doing it this way, sometimes forces creators or founders into doing something they wouldn't normally do, which will end up crippling the product in the long run. And so being able to both trust your community, but have the community has the trust in me to make hiring decisions. They don't go ask, oh, well, who'd you go get? Or are you going to, do this thing or that thing? They offer suggestions. I think a lot of them are brilliant, like we had earlier. But, we have a really, really great two-way relationship, and it's an amazing street to be on, honestly.
Yeah, we've sort of seen this life cycle in crypto. I think when crypto originally came out, it was like, hey, this is really interesting. You can do things on chain. There's no government intervention. It's really cool. And then I think people started taking advantage of that when we got to the part where people started launching rugs and basically saying, hey, I can get away with whatever I want on chain. It's like the Wild West. And now we're kind of coming full circle where it's like, okay, we really do need regulations. Like there's a lot of value. We love a lot of the beauty with crypto, but there is some necessity for regulations and that to fall into place. So it's an interesting balance we're seeing and life cycle.
Oh, absolutely. And we talked about it, right? There was a talk at NABS about credit unions picking up digital assets. Like I said, capital markets. One of the really cool things that kind of jumps back to the data center thing is we're using on-chain metrics and systems to optimize power delivery, water delivery, so that we can make data centers cheaper to run, and the compute and the overlying, the overall, at some level, that also affects, Solana and Ethereum transaction fees. And so just by investing in blockchain technology, there's this really cool one that measures the real-time price of electricity and the real-time usage of a data center, and then buys electricity from a different provider so that you always are running with the cheapest cost of electricity. You're always validating Solana, mining Bitcoin with the cheapest amount of
an arbitrage on electricity.
Yeah, no, it's insane. It's insane, right? And that's all being done on blockchain, which is super, super, super cool.
Yeah, crazy. Chill, you got anything, brother?
I think No, I think I've covered a lot of my questions on my end. Do we have anything else in chat?
Just been
I'm
chilling.
checking.
We've just been chilling, had some good conversation. I don't know, Dax. Anything you want to cover?
Um, just that.
I know you wanted to cover the story of MCG at one point.
Yeah, I did. I want to hear about how did you guys start as a group?
Chill. I'll let you take it away.
Cool. So our producer Josh, he's somewhere in the background, but he's usually on stream with us. But today it's Thanksgiving in Canada. But Josh came to me with the idea behind the stream, and we kicked it off in what was it, April, earlier this year. Basically streaming regularly every single week. We had a community, and I've done stuff like this before in the past, where I've done spaces um or different things, but it was all too much for a solo act, so I let it go. But now, kind of having Josh and having another someone else to kind of like, give ideas and other things, while I can cover content and one side of it, he can cover another. And so, we were streaming, and Dom actually was like showing up to the streams regularly. He would give us suggestions on who we should bring on to the show. Whenever we do bring them on the show, he'd ask like super detailed questions. And it just got to the point where I'm like, bro, like, let's bring Dom on, bro. Let's stop playing around. Like, let's bring Dom in. Like, I mean, he's been on every stream. He's been consistent. And then me and Dom, we've known each other for years, like trading together on ETH and things of that nature. So I've known Dom like previously. I know that he's just a legend. He's just a good guy. Never involved in anything crazy. Like, and you hear about, like, I mean, all this stuff around like KOLs and scams and all this stuff, but he's never been mixed up in any of that stuff, and I've always known him to be a pretty cool dude. So we teamed up with Dom, and now we have the pleasure of all three of us, kind of growing this stream. And we started our Twitter account, because we used to stream from our individual accounts. But we started our Twitter account back in August, at the beginning of August, and since then, we've done multiple millions in terms of impressions. We do probably six figures, probably a quarter to half a mil impressions on a weekly basis. Viewership, as you can see today, we're almost at like 6,000 viewers, I believe, at this point now. Yeah, like we're like 5.6 thousand viewers, and that's a credit to the Zera community as well. So shout out to you guys, and appreciate you guys showing up. But it's been a crazy road, man. I mean, this stream is mostly focused on ICM projects. And when we say ICM, it's really synonymous with utility projects. And that's where my passion has always been in the space, and where I've always focused my content. I always like, covering serious builders, people looking to build something amazing. And that's honestly what made Zera so attractive in terms of an interview, Dax. So, like, credit to you and what you're building as well. But with ICM, it was very, very dead. It was a very dead narrative. So April, May, June, July, like those are like just we're literally just grinding our faces into the floor, because there's no interest in that sector. And then finally, in August, like I think a couple weeks into August, we finally, ICM catches a wave, because it really is an important sector, and what's being done there is can change literally everything. Like we just talked a little bit about MetaDAO and what they're doing. But this is such an important step for crypto, such an important step for our industry, and turning ourselves from this kind of like wild, wild west to an actual serious place for Web2 founders and entrepreneurs to build something. And so we wanted to highlight that with this stream. And, it took a lot of work to, get this off the ground and continue doing it. But, happy to be doing it with Josh and Dom. I can tell you that for sure.
That's awesome, and you hit on something really, really important that I think we totally missed, and is a huge topic that we could totally touch on. But it's that you met Dom, and you're like, you knew him from these places, was never involved in anything, you know, sketchy or whatever else. And it's that validation, or using, you know, you've built a company, right, around this brand that this show. And some of the things that like blew my community's mind, which I thought was day one, step zero type shit, was forming a company, going to a local area, forming a company, forming a legal relationship with your co-founders and your underwriters, and having a piece of paper contract between you and them. And it seems like that attitude really went away with a lot of crypto, where people didn't realize, wait, I need an LLC, or I need a C corp, or I need an S corp in order to do these things and protect yourself from liability. And absolutely, and I think it's an underrated tool, right? We have 200 years of business in this country alone, where lawyers got together to solve the problems of how to start a company, how to run a company, and how to do it. If you're going to try and reinvent the wheel and not rely on those tools after 200 years, even if it's an entirely new space like crypto, it seems kind of dumb to me. You know what I mean? Do you see a lot of projects like form LLCs, form companies early on or later? Where does that step usually come in, or has it even come in for you guys yet?
It's been a more recent thing.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say that's kind of like a driver behind some of the questions that we've been asking you, because again, like ICM is like really new, and we've seen a lot of people experiment with how to give tokens intrinsic value. So we see some people trying to do that via like buybacks that are connected to revenue. But as of late, we've seen a lot more innovative ways of tying or innovative ways of giving tokens value, such as tying it to equity. So there's like an equity anchored model. I remember SOAR, they're working on I think it's called a DSP token standard.
Okay.
They're also working on a way of tying equity to tokens. MetaDAO is working on kind of like I believe, from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dom, a MetaDAO, there are emissions, there are token emissions, I believe. And what they do is the token holders can control those emissions, and they can control kind of what is done with, and there's a treasury for that particular project, and they can also control what's done with that treasury. And I mean, not everything, you know, the founder needs to ask about, but there are certain things where it's like, okay, like maybe I need to engage the community on this. So we've seen like all these different setups coming to light, and it's just a matter of figuring out, okay, which one works the best, or is there not even a one size fits all? Maybe it's just what works for your particular project. Maybe there's someone that is already functioning, already generating revenue, and you know, maybe one launch pad or one token standard fits them, and you know, maybe one fits another. So I think it all depends, but this is literally what this stream is uncovering, is just this live cutting edge you know, this cutting edge movement within crypto that's essentially moving toward the regulation that we see coming. You know, we see regulations easing within the US. And so it's just a matter of like, how are these two things going to come together? We saw recent things like the exemption rule, the innovative exemption rule from the SEC.
Yep.
So we see things coming out, and we don't know how this will play out, but all we do know is it will be streamed here.
The truth is, we didn't see that conversation happening anywhere else, right? You know, we want to find out, and maybe there is no one single answer that works best. But we want to find out, you know, what does the future look like? Who's doing it best? And no one's having these conversations with founders where they can get real, get vulnerable, understand the company ins and outs, and ask the tough questions. And we thought there was a gap and a lack there. And so it was really obvious just coming together and saying, hey, we already do this personally as investors. I remember I would get on calls with these founders all the time, just personally do it. And I'm like, why don't we stream this? You know, why don't we have this to where everyone can see it? Because this is what everyone wants to know. And I think it's like so important that humanizing and understanding the mind and vision behind a founder, to get them on stream like we did with you, Dax, and explain and see their vision, see their passion, hear it in their voice. There was clearly a gap there, not a lot of people doing it. And so it was just such an obvious place for us to fill. But yeah, so interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can speak on our structure, right? And because there isn't a one size fits all. That's kind of why business exists and why lawyers exist, is what I'm learning, is that when you have a problem, whether that is capital equity, whether that is founder ownership, whether that is this way or another way, you know, You can do founder agreements without allocating equity. You can do all these things. I'm specifically, what I have deigned to do specifically is talk to the lawyers and essentially write a custom operating agreement that specifically says that regardless of who owns the company and whatever percent or whatever equity, the fees that are made from the pool are the property of the company and are to be used as business cash flow, never to be used to pay out owners or equity, right? So all the money that would be made from trading fees or from the company doesn't get paid out to executives or to owners as bonuses. It remains as the cash flow needed to either save money, build up a war chest, or to hire more developers so that we can scale. And so I've explicitly made that clear in legal terms too, that like nobody, and even if, because we're just an LLC right now, but if we were ever to go to file for C Corp status or for those things for investors to buy large chunks of equity directly in the company, they would get none of the money from the fees because that's locked into supporting development, supporting the community, and addressing business needs and expenses. And by making that separation, it kind of the opposite of, because you guys were talking about rolling token ownership into equity. By doing the opposite and keeping them clear means that owners don't get any specific, people with equity don't get any advantage over normal token holders. That way, everybody's incentivized to just have the price go up. And by doing that, we increase trade volume, which increases our longevity as a business and our ability to hire and produce products that hopefully drive the price up.
You're muted.
Oh, am I muted? Oh.
No, sorry,
no.
I'm muted. Imagine
I
Dax
just
had that
did
whole
that rant muted.
We were just quiet for 5 minutes. No, I think that's interesting. How do you communicate that with the community? Did they know that you had this contract in place or legal agreement in place that the fees are always going to be dedicated towards growth of the company, or is this the first time?
They do now.
See, like that's important stuff though, right? Like as a community member, I would love to know that. And
Yeah.
just because to know, like, hey, legally, if you ever try to just run off with this money or throw bonuses at yourself, or whoever to, some form of getting money, to go back to them rather than the business, like it's important that the community knows this stuff. How can you like?
Well, that
I don't
wasn't
know.
really a decision that was like made until this past week. Like, because until I met with the firms at the conferences, we didn't know who we were going to go with a law firm, and we're signing them this week, and we're getting that paperwork ordered. And I have core people who help me on the core team on the back end, Zarda and Mihad. They're amazing, and I want to make sure they're recognized for what they're doing, helping me manage the community and run the community, because I wouldn't be here without them. So figuring out a founders agreement and how to structure this, to give them that recognition of helping me build this, again, while giving them what they deserve with that recognition and, maybe the equity, but also protecting what we're building. And we kind of all sat down, and it was when we sat down with the lawyers, they're like, where do you want to go with this? And do you want equity? Do you want this? How do we have this conversation? Which feelings run high because people want percentages and all that kind of stuff. And I was amazed and humble to hear both of them go, no, whatever, we hold tokens, we just want whatever is best for the business. And so having co-founders that literally stand up and say, it's not necessarily about that, it's about the community, and it's about what's doing best for the business, whatever, the smart thing, whatever protects us the most legally, and whatever is best for the business, are going hand in hand as we build this. And so now that we've got that settled down, we're writing it out, we're figuring it out, we're retaining a law firm, and and moving forward with that process, because even releasing software, we can only go as fast as the lawyers or the regulatory agencies tell us we can go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that's super important. That communication transparency is only bullish and further supports the case you made here. So thanks, Dax. I want to keep this here, maybe wrap it at 2.5 hours, which is we're pushing here. Keep it like that so people can watch it and not get too nervous at the long time when they see it on YouTube. But we appreciate you coming on, Dax. As always, we pulled you up twice now back, but this is really it.
No, I appreciate that. And like I said, most important thing, even if you don't support the project, go vote.
There you go. That's Dax's parting message. Peace, guys. We'll catch you later. Dax, thanks so much, brother.